Hello.
I said hi.
It's okay.
2 seconds ago.
Hi guys. Once again, thanks for tuning in. We are here with today's topic, which is minimalism, which is actually something I don't know very much about. So I'm going to ask Beth questions that I'm sure that a lot of us have, and hopefully shed some light on what it is. A couple videos ago, I don't know if it's weeks or days or when we'll end up posting them, but a couple videos ago we talked about decluttering and how decluttering is not the same as minimalism. When we say that we organize and declutter for clients, we think that a lot of times people think that if we come in to help you declutter, it means that you have to get rid of everything, or that we're going to pressure you into getting rid of something, or that if you're doing it for yourself and you are decluttering, that you ought to get rid of everything, or that, you're going to be left with nothing. And that truly is not the case. When we declutter, we just want you to have things that are useful to you, nothing that's just taking up space and gathering dust, nothing that's hanging over your head, making you feel guilty because you're not using it, nothing that is related to the kind of person or the lifestyle that you want, but rather the things that are actually useful to who you are and your day-to-day, such as we were just talking about nice, fancy dishes. If I have a problem with, I have a lot of things that I love to hold on to, maybe for one day that we have a bigger house, or we have a house where we can have people over more often. But the truth is that right now, we can have a few people over, but we're just not in a place where we can do a lot of entertaining, and we're not in a place where we want to do a whole lot of entertaining. And so I don't need to hold on to those things for a future space, but getting rid of those things and keeping the things around that are for the house that we do have, and the type of lives we are currently living, and not who we wish we could be. Because that just ends up making me feel guilty every time I see that thing, like, oh yeah, that chip dish, but we never have people over, oh, I should clean the house because we need to be able to have people over, blah blah blah. Like, it's just a cycle of guilt and anxiety and should haves, would haves, kind of thing. So anyway, minimalism is a little bit more on that more, I guess, extreme side, in the sense that some people really do find that they are most comfortable when they have very few things. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about what decluttering is and isn't. So tell us what your definition of minimalism is.
My idea of minimalism is the idea that you have only what you use, only what is benefiting you and your family. Which, now that I mention that, like, we kind of do that with decluttering, but minimalism is this idea of intentionally living with less. Yeah. The idea of maybe you're downsizing, or maybe you want to live life more simply. And that's kind of how me and my husband live as minimalists.
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to my mind is the idea of, so if we were decluttering, we might say, oh, well, let's only keep, a set of mugs, like 6 mugs or 8 mugs or whatever. But I think a minimalist would say, well, there's 2 of us, there's me and my husband, and so let's keep 2 mugs. And yes, that means or 4, but yes, that means we wash them every day, or we wash it every time we use it, or I know that I tend to keep water, and you can just dump it out and leave it. It doesn't necessarily have to get washed. If you're going to be the one using it again, then just use it again the next day, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Does that kind of jive with what you're thinking as far as living with less?
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of people, and this happens in the kitchen a lot, because I've had people and seen videos of people, they'll go in and they'll be like, why do we have 12 dishes? There's 2 of us, or there's 4 of us. And so some minimalists do the one per person rule. So like if you have 5 kids and 2 adults, you have 7 plates. And it just depends on what kind of lifestyle you want. You don't have to limit yourself to a number. I generally stick to the rule about 4 plates. I have a few more plates in there right now, but I have like bigger plates and smaller plates. My husband likes using the bigger ones and I use the smaller ones. And then we also like to have company over. So you have to ask yourself, are we people that want to have people over, that want to entertain? If you're not people that ever want people over, then you can stick with a smaller number. I think right now my husband and I have 8 plates, which is actually more than we had in our last place. But as far as silverware goes, we have 1 set. I think we have 4. And one of the rules that I heard is that you take the number of people in your house and you multiply it by 2, and that's how many you keep. So 2 people, 4 forks, 4 spoons, things like that. So, but again, it really just depends. The beauty of minimalism is that you can create it to be what you want, and you really have to look into your lifestyle. Like, if you're someone who likes to entertain, then you might have more things in your kitchen or in a certain area of your home than another minimalist. So you shouldn't feel like you have to restrict yourself to a number, but if you're someone who's really wanting to downsize and you're like, really? I have permission to only use 1 plate, right? Permission to only have like this many forks or spoons or coffee mugs, what have you. Just there's resources out there, and I would love to talk to you more about it if you're interested.
So talk to us about the myth that, or maybe the picture that people get of minimalism being white walls and white couch and no pillow, like just no color. Like, what is your thought on style and minimalism and this idea that minimalism looks a certain way?
Well, that would probably come from YouTube, and I've seen a lot of those myself. In fact, when my husband and I were first starting our journey to minimalism, and we were in the process of downsizing, I had this idea that I wanted my house to look like that, like white walls,
like a magazine.
Yeah, like a magazine.
Yeah.
And the longer that we were married and stuff, I just realized, like, I don't actually want that. I like the idea of that, but that's not me. So a lot of people get this idea because there are a lot of minimalists out there with magazine-like homes with white walls, tons of plants. A lot of people think minimalists have a ton of plants, and there are a lot of minimalists with a ton of plants. And if you're a plant person, like, that's definitely something you can have, but don't feel like you have to have plants to be a minimalist, because you don't. I have 2 house plants, and both were given to me. I have a tiny succulent that I am desperately trying not to kill, and I got a bulb from the place that I work. We had this leftover philodendron that I'm trying to grow. Really, I think they're testing to see if I can keep a plant alive.
So you gotta make a cut.
Yeah. So a lot of people have this idea because there are a lot of minimalists out there who have homes that look like this. But your home does not have to look like that. And I'm actually going to talk about that once I get to like different classifications of minimalists and different minimalists I know and I like and follow. So
I just literally just occurred to me that I have been reading a little bit on the internet about this idea of simple living, and that means something different to everyone. For some people, it means not having a smartphone because they just need a little flip phone to make calls or for emergencies or whatever, but they don't need all the chaos of everything that comes with having a smartphone and being connected constantly. For some people, I've read that their experience with it is just kind of eliminating the excess, like not needing cable or not needing Netflix or things like that, and just kind of making things a little bit more simple. But I just think that with anything, whether it's decluttering, minimalism, simple living, things like that, it's intended to be something that is custom to you. there are no rules. There are probably people out there who would say, oh, that's not really minimalism, or you can't call yourself a minimalist, but they don't matter. The idea is just to get to a point where you are living the way that you want to live. Not living the way that someone says you should live as a minimalist, but also not living as in the way that someone says, you know, oh, you need a smartphone. Oh, you need this. Oh, you all
need
these
12
ads. You
plates.
have to
I
buy
can't
this.
believe you don't have 12
or
plates.
you need 4 different sets because you need one for, you know, daily living. You need one for holidays. You need one for when the queen comes over to have tea or whatever, you know. So in the end, it's all about not necessarily one extreme or the other. I need nothing or I need everything, but just making the choice and being conscious of whether or not you're living with the things that you want or the things that other people say that you should have.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about the resources that you enjoy and or the different kind of styles that we were talking about.
Yeah. So like different classifications.
Yeah.
Of minimalist. Okay. So there is the extreme minimalist, which I think is the first thing that that comes to a lot of people's minds. And I honestly think that some people have called me an extreme minimalist because I have a lot less than maybe the average person my age. And so the extreme minimalists are people who live with, they're probably typically, not always, but they might have a number of shirts that they have, or they might have like an extreme capsule wardrobe, like a 10-item wardrobe, which I love. I think that those are so amazing. I
could do it.
Someday I'm gonna do it. But it's this idea that you don't really have anything. Typically, extreme minimalists are not looking to entertain a whole lot. They're just wanting to really get down to what they use daily. Like their home, their place is a place to sleep, and that's it.
Yeah.
And they might be, and minimalists in general kind of prefer experiences over things anyway, but extreme minimalists are probably doing this for a reason like that. They're like, I want this lifestyle, so I don't need all these things. Yeah. I'll keep very few things. I've heard of extreme minimalists who don't have couch. They just have their bed that they sleep in. Some minimalists don't even have a bed. I've literally on YouTube, there's a girl who has everything that just fits in a rucksack. And I really admire that.
Yeah.
But that's not my brand of minimalism that I use. There is minimal-ish, and this is like the other end of minimalism. It's when you are minimal, you're decluttering, you want to be a minimalist, and I got this term from Erica Lucas, who's someone that I quoted last week, I think, and she's the one who said, decide what to keep, ask why, let go of the rest. She is an aspiring minimalist, former hoarder. She calls herself minimal-ish. Like, she has things that her family enjoys, but she only keeps what they use. But it's definitely more than an extreme minimalist would keep. And typically minimal-ish people are people who they still want to enjoy the comforts of home, and they might entertain too. So that's what minimal-ish kind of looks like. There's the cozy minimalist, and I think that I'm kind of between the extreme and the cozy minimalist. I was actually just talking with my husband, Brandon, last night. We were walking our dog, and I was like, I love that when I walk into our apartment, I feel warm. Even if it's not warm inside our apartment, I feel warm inside. And that is because every place that we have lived, I have loved our little apartments because we've really taken the time to make it our own. And so this is when the idea that you have to have white walls, which it's funny because our apartment does have white walls. The idea that you have to have white walls, a ton of plants, kind of came at a head for me. Our apartment is not stylish by any stretch of the imagination. We have a Walmart lamp. we were given another lamp that's a little bent, but I really love it. And these are things that we have I think I mentioned it, like a game clock hanging up in our living area, and we just have a lot of random things that you would not see in a magazine by any means, but it's ours and it's home. And the cozy minimalist is the idea that you create kind of a cozy environment. You use blankets, plants, books. You use those types of things for decor. You use bigger statement items instead of a ton of small items. So, for example, like what are those things called with all the pictures, like a mural, wall mural?
Collage.
Collage, yeah. So it's actually going against the idea of having a ton of little things for a collage and having like one big statement piece. So it's the idea of less is more, and still creating a cozy environment without having any clutter. And that's honestly, I would probably call myself more of a cozy minimalist, because we have board games and things, because those are things that Brandon and I really enjoy. Those are things that we use when we have company over. So cozy minimalist is also the idea that you can still have fun and but still lead a minimal lifestyle.
It doesn't have to. I think it's kind of the opposite of cold. Like,
yeah,
the white walls and white couch and just almost no furniture makes me feel like a hospital room, or this no one really lives here kind of thing. Whereas cozy minimalism in your home feels like a home and not just temporary. You know, like, or maybe not a hospital, but a hotel room where it's just the basics, and it has, it goes together, but it goes together a little too well because everything is all this one shade of blue or whatever. Yeah. Whereas the cozy side of things, I don't think extreme minimalism has to be that way either, but it definitely tends that direction versus maybe having a little bit more personality to it, or customization maybe.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways that you can customize minimalism, which brings me to our next minimalist, and she is on Instagram and maybe YouTube. She's got a TED Talk. Her name is the Afro Minimalist, and I adore her, and she's really funny, and she has so much color in her apartment. She's got a ton of color, and she is someone who gave this TED Talk about the idea of creating minimalism, your own brand of minimalism, basically. She said, when I was looking at pictures of people's minimalist homes, I was like, it's so white, it's so bland, like, do I have to have my home look that way? And this was an idea that a lot of minimalists have been asking themselves and finding out on their own, and something that my husband and I have been finding out on our own. And but she just talks beautifully about minimalism, and her apartment is gorgeous. If you have Instagram, go follow her, look at some of her photos, because her place is really inspiring. And you wouldn't honestly think that when you see her apartment, you're like, she's not living with less. She's not an extreme minimalist. It's a brand of minimalism I think a lot of people could go for, because she just has all these rich colors and textures in her home. And cozy minimalism talks too about adding textures into your home. And so I just encourage you, if you are like, I can't do that, I can't live in a white walled prison, like, you don't have to.
In a hotel forever.
Yeah, you don't have to. And if that's something that you want, then go for it. There are so many videos out there showing you how. And then there's this idea, did I talk about messy minimalist?
Yes, yeah, she's the last one.
Yeah, so there's also a book, I believe, which I haven't read this yet, but it's called The Messy Minimalist, and she also has a blog and an Instagram, I believe. But she talks about, her and her family downsizing and minimizing things that she had been kind of collecting, and she just basically talks about the bare bones of minimalism, like getting rid of things that aren't serving your family. But she also has this really awesome tent in her home for her family, for her kids. And so The messy minimalist is this idea that you can be a minimalist and things don't have to be perfect looking or in a perfect, they don't have to be just so. It's this idea that your home is messy, but you don't have a lot, so it's not as overwhelming as someone who is not a minimalist, but they have a ton of stuff and it's really messy and you're just constantly stepping over things. Like, you might be stepping over things as a messy minimalist, but you won't be stepping over as many things. It's a manageable mess.
I think cleaning is easier, and we've talked a little bit about how decluttering is kind of an ongoing process, and I think that it's that much easier when you don't have as much stuff.
Yeah.
Because you see the stark contrast between the things that you do use every day and that you enjoy and appreciate versus the things that really do just take up space. And so it's not as much cut and dry, I think, for that side of things, but it just makes things simpler.
Yeah.
Simplified and easier to clean and easier to enjoy, because you're not having to cut through all of the noise and all of the excess.
And something too that I think we talked about, or I've definitely talked about with a ton of people, if you come into your home at the end of the day and you're more overwhelmed than when you left work, it is time to at least declutter. You don't have to be a minimalist, but like one of my favorite things, and just in continuation of what I was talking about with my husband last night, like when I come into our home, I feel warm and I don't feel overwhelmed. I feel content, and that's something that I want for everyone. I want everyone to be able to walk into their home and be able to breathe a bit eeasier, be like, oh, I'm home.
And not have a to-do list, not have the first thing, which I think when you have a big family, even just from my perspective of having dogs, there's always going to be a little bit of, oh, I'm home, it's time to feed the dogs now. But it doesn't have to be that you walk in the door and you see, oh, that I have to vacuum, oh, I have to do this, oh, I have to do that, or I can't even sit down because there's some stuff on the couch, or that kind of thing. Like, that just adds that stress.
Yeah.
To walking in the door should be something where you can relax and not have 1,000 more things added to your plate.
And you can focus on your spouse or your partner or your dog or your kids. Like, you can focus on the things that are lasting, on the relationships. And the last thing, one of the things that I really is a goal for me with my clients is, can you imagine coming home and your dinner table was cleared? Like, you had nothing on the dinner table. Maybe you had like candles or flowers or whatever, but that's it. You have space to eat. Like, that to me was such a revolutionary idea for some of my clients. They were like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine my counters being clear for more than a day, or actually a day is kind of long
between
for some
meals.
People, but yeah. So this idea that you can really, when you come home, you can really invest in your relationships. You can go see a movie, or for my husband, I play a board game, play a video game. Like, you can do something that you enjoy and something that is going to contribute to your relationships. And it honestly will and you don't have to be a minimalist to do this, but it will help decrease if there's any tension for stuff in the house. Like, decreasing those items is going to help your relationship. Like, I've seen it in my clients' lives, I've seen it in my own life. Like, it really does ease the stress of each person, and you feel lighter. You feel lighter, and it's a great thing. I'm very passionate about it.
Well, awesome. Let us know if you have any questions in the comments or in messages. You can email us or send us a message on Facebook. But we will be back for another video soon. You can also let us know if you have any ideas for topics or something that you'd like to hear us talk about. But anyway, stay safe out there, guys. Have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.